55% of workers in the United States are currently experiencing burnout. We're at a 6-year high. And 72% of those workers have reported moderate to high stress levels. So here's the thing. If you're feeling exhausted, frustrated, and you're burned out at work, you're not the only one. You know, I've been I know what this feels like, having gone through it over the last several years, and especially in the last year or two. Workers' fatigue and burnout has been a big problem, and it it's not a surprise to me, because especially now that you know more people feel unhappy and unfulfilled, there is good reason behind it, and I don't think it's getting better. And we see the numbers out there, yet people are not really admitting it, and there really is no change in the workplace. So today, I wanted to talk about my personal experience with burnout and just some quick ways that you can overcome stress and burnout at work in the same time, because it is manageable and it is possible to do it while you get through the bad days, but also your better days as well. So, over the last few years, and especially this year, I've been feeling really stressed out and frustrated at work because I feel like there is too much work going on, and there are a lot of tasks being thrown out at me. Now, they're basic and straightforward tasks that I can do, but sometimes when they pile up or when my peers cannot get to it, then it does become an issue. And so it does frustrate me a lot. And, there are definitely things that can cause your burnout. You have to micromanage. Maybe you have a heavier workload and you feel this lack of appreciation and so forth. And, burnout is a real thing. It affects you mentally and physically, and, you get frustrated, you have lower energy, and you feel drained even after, coming back from a long weekend. Now, weekends do help, but for a lot of people, the weekends are not enough to, recuperate, so forth. And I've had to actively work on avoid completing, the burnout stage because, I've been through burnouts, several times, and it's not fun. And when you get to that point where you feel that you're not getting anywhere or so forth, or you're not getting that support, then you do have to look into ways on how to manage it. And there are definitely ways to do that, which I'll go over. But, uh, this issue of burnout has been a big one over time, and it is something that uh, should be addressed in the workplace. But unfortunately, it's not the case. See, the big problem is that burnout has become very common. Like I mentioned, 55% of US workers are burned out, according to some of the latest data from 2025. Among Generation Z, that is hit hardest with them, with 66% reporting burnout. And high stress and burnout, about 72% of workers, has led to lower productivity and poor mental health. And many people feel trapped because they just rely on one job for all of their income to pay for their living expenses and to basically be on survival mode. And you think that, you wonder why, you know, workplace productivity has declined, and you think why more people are feeling more anxious, they're nervous, and, they're going through more mental health issues. Well, Burnout and just going through a high stress work environment has contributed to that. And you know what's ironic is that, a lot of workplaces, including the place I work at, they emphasize the importance of mental health, and they provide resources for their employees to, take charge of their mental health and so forth. Now, that sounds great, and people will take advantage of it, yet I think a lot of employers fall short of really tackling the big issue. And even with them helping out, more people are still feeling frustrated and stressed out because they're not getting that support. So it's kind of contradicting this point that even though employers are aware of it and they do the best they can, their employees are still feeling stressed out and they're going through mental health issues and so forth. And it's just becoming a much bigger problem that I think a lot of employers cannot tackle. So, and that definitely does ring a bell. And employee engagement overall across the workplace has really gone down in the last few years, and that continues to show. And I think more people are starting to really understand that what they're doing is not helping them and so forth. And this is I can definitely relate to that. And even though employers can do the best they can, uh, employees feel like they're not getting the help that they need, and they are not uh, getting it on a more personal level. So, I mean, they're getting the proper resources, yet they still feel stressed out and they're going through burnout and mental health issues and so forth. And it's uh, it's unfortunate in a way. I mean, that's how I look at it. So, what do we do in this situation? Well, there are some good ways. I mean, employees can set clear boundaries between work and personal time, and taking even like short mental breaks throughout the day does help as well. And I'm not talking about when you go on your breaks or your lunch day, you're just gonna stare or scroll at your phone, and you're gonna waste time scrolling on stupid TikTok or Instagram and that, because I think that is just a complete waste of time, and it's not really taking a mental break. When you're on these social media platforms, you're kind of like in this dopamine mode where it's like you need a stimulus and so forth, and you need to occupy your mind with something else. When really, the idea of taking breaks is to not look at your phone and to not have to, mindlessly scroll and just get some quick, cheap dopamine. Because that's not the point of taking a mental break. Good mental breaks include going on walks without your phone. And this is something that I'm seeing far more common when I'm on my breaks and I see people walking around with their phones. It's disturbing. Even with people sitting down and they're looking at their phones, or they're walking around the floor and they have their phones with them. That's not the idea of taking a mental break. Real mental breaks include walking without your phone. Uh, Other times it can be just sitting down and you're taking deep breaths for like a good 10 to 15 minutes. Now imagine if more people could on their breaks, they could just take the time to just maybe sit down. They don't have anything with them, and they can just close their eyes and take deep breaths for uh, 10 to 15 minutes. Now, deep breathing for 10 to 15 minutes sounds pretty intense, but it's not that hard to do. And so, if you want to start deep breathing, you can start slow. Start with 1 minute a day. And then gradually over time, you can build it up to 2 minutes. And then eventually 3 minutes. And then maybe a few weeks from now, you can do 5 minutes. When I started doing deep breathing, I started with 1 minute a day. And when you make it a daily habit where you're deep breathing and so forth, you'd be amazed to see how much calmer and just more present and focused you'll actually be. So, and as I mention this right now, I just realized that, I think it's not just the employer that should be blamed on, but it's also at the individual level, the employee, where they're doing things that are not benefiting them, like when they go on breaks, instead of just staring and scrolling on their phones, they should be taking short breaks like going on walks and doing deep breathing without any electronic devices at all. So, you know, I feel like taking those short breaks helps a lot. And also, you got to protect your energy by saying no to unnecessary tasks. I'm getting more into the habit of saying no to certain things at work. And I don't care if people like it or not, but if it's not a must to do task or if it's not something that you're obligated to do, then you have the right to say no. And if that does become an issue, then address it with your supervisor. There are things where you're going to have to say no to at times, and you can't be just Mr. Yes Man or Mr. Yes Lady. If you say yes to everything, then you're it's going to that is the quickest way to lead to burnout. So when it's not required of you, sometimes the best thing to do is just say no to these tasks. So, and you also have to detach emotionally from things that you can't control at work. You know, where I work with a diverse group of people, and they have different behaviors and different styles and attitudes and so forth. And I get those small group of people work who have bad attitudes and so forth. And detaching from it emotionally and uh, just keeping in mind that if people are not happy with you or they take things on you, understand that it's they're not taking it on you, it's more of themselves. When they are frustrated or they want to take their problems out on you, understand that it's not about you, but it's more about them that they have the problem with. you know and this is something that I've learned over time, where if I want to blame people or I want to take my problems out on others, it's more of a me issue than on other people. And so you can't control that type of behavior from people. And you got to understand that people go through the motions and they have to deal with their own problems. And yes, you can help them, but ultimately they have to solve their own problems and do the work themselves. So these are some things that I want to bring up, and these are things that I observe and I see in the workplace I'm in right now. And some of the things that I have gone over, these are pretty basic to do. And if you were to follow these and have an open mind, and you start to realize that, it's not all just about you, or if people at work are going to criticize you or take their own problems on you, understand that it's not your fault and that you have to, what I want to say, you have to take things under your control. I'm someone who has been really focused on really prioritizing my inputs over the outputs. And when you let people, well, you can help people address their problems, but ultimately they have to do the work and solve their own problems. Because I feel like at the end of the day, ultimately it's going to be up to each individual to take ownership of their work, and they should be able to solve their own problems. Now, you can help them, and you can have constructive conversations with people, whether it's at the peer level or if it's a manager to direct report level. There are better ways to do that. So, but these are just some basic ways that I'm dealing with at work right now, and they can definitely help. But here's the thing, a lot of this stuff is just temporary. And when you decide to take things at more of like a day to day or a temporary basis, and you know that working your job is not permanent, you have to look at the bigger picture ahead. And this is where it comes to my next point, is that you have to build an exit plan. So, and this is the ultimate solution that I bring up to everyone who watches this video, is that you can't just rely on your solo job or your sole income from working one job. What you need to do is you have to create additional income streams so that one job does not control your life. So, and I will go over more of this near the end of the video shortly, but you have to have an exit plan. And I have one right now because I know the job I'm working at, that's not a forever thing. I see myself leaving that job probably between now and the next few years. So here's some takeaways from my conversation today. Number one, you have to recognize burnout early. The earlier that you identify it, the better. And you don't want to wait until you're completely drained. Number two, you got to protect your energy aggressively. Set boundaries and manage your time better. And I can't tell you how important it is to protect your energy so that way you can focus on the tasks that you need to work on and that is uh, expected from your role. Whether you are a frontline employee or if you are a team leader or you're a supervisor or you are at a manager level, you have to prioritize your energy so that way you can do the tasks that you have been set to do in your job. And then number three, more importantly for the long run, start building your escape plan. Like I said, multiple income streams is one of the best ways to reduce work stress. So that way, if you get to a point in time where you have other streams of income coming in and you're making good money elsewhere besides your job, or if you get to the point where your job is not your primary source of income, or you may say to yourself, maybe I don't need this job. I'm doing well financially, so why should I stay here? Then that is the moment or the day where you call it quits and you move on. And I'm working on getting to that point, and when that day happens, it'll be great. But at the moment, that's something that my plan is still a work in progress, and that is something I am actively working on at the moment. So to wrap things up, burnout is very common, but you can overcome it by protecting your energy and building a better future for yourself. And if you want to break free from this never-ending rat race and you want to build a life that doesn't rely on just having one stressful job or basically one income source, then I encourage you to check out my ebook called Three Paths, Three Prisons, Freedom or Indentured Servitude. And in this ebook, I go over the three most typical paths that a lot of young adults take. And then I provide another alternative that young adults can also take. And if you decide to take this alternative route and you dedicate your time and energy to that for the next 4 to 5 years, I can assure you that, although no guarantees, you will do far much better in the long run. And not only will you be better off financially, but you will also be hopefully more happier and more fulfilled. And you start to do things that you want to do in life. If you don't want to work that job anymore, or if you want to do things uh, that make you passionate while having a steady income stream or a way where you can generate cash flow every single week, then this ebook will definitely get you on the right path to that. So, if you're interested in checking out that ebook, check it out in the link in the video description below. Once you get to that opt-in page, you will have the opportunity to sign up for my email list. And then shortly afterwards, you will get a copy of my free ebook and you can take it from there. But that's all I got for now. And I'd like to know some of your thoughts or if you have any questions. So, are you someone who's going through burnout right now? Do you feel very frustrated and do you feel like you haven't been in your rhythm at your job? Have you considered leaving your job at some point down the road? What are some ways that you can start working on your own exit plan if you have one started? I'd like to know your thoughts, so feel free to hit me up in the comments section below, and I will look forward to reading them. But other than that, that's all I got for now, and until next time, peace.